Much better. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to October Nights. But as I said, today we're talking about the 2021 film Shadow in the Cloud. And this film is one of my favorites of this year, just because it's so balls to the wall, insane and campy and fun, but serious whenever it needs to be. And that's kind of exactly what I wanted. It feels like a longer Twilight Zone episode that's a bit gory, a bit violent, and because it feels like that because it's dealing with a lot of political issues. Because if you don't think that Twilight Zone is a political show, first off, you're insane. You've lost your mind. How do you come away from the Twilight Zone and not think that? Also, all art is political by its very existence, and especially horror. Horror is picking a political side and advocating for it. Just all art is politics. I mean, life is politics, especially depending on, who you are. And this film kind of deals with that because our main character is a woman during World War II, and let's just say the men on the plane that she's with don't take too kindly to her. So this is a film that's dealing with things like misogyny, sexism, domestic violence. So if those are things that you can't handle, probably skip this film. Because as good as it is, you don't want to put yourself in a situation where it ends up triggering you and you have a bad time and you need to go to therapy because of it. So please take care of yourself. Trying to do this with all the horror films. Obviously Night Books was a lot more chill. I honestly don't know. I haven't watched tomorrow's film yet, so I can't tell you. This is actually the last film on the list for a while that I have seen. Because tomorrow we're covering Oxygen, which is a Netflix film from, I believe, Fede Alvarez, or I don't remember, some director, some French director. It's a French film. It looks very interesting. It's a very single location, isolation film, single character. Looks really cool. Very excited to watch it. It's not until October 8th that we have another film that I've actually seen, so I gave myself kind of a bit of a breather at the top, and now I have to watch a film every single night, or pregame in advance several films. And since tonight is Sunday and tomorrow is movie club live, but also work, I don't have time to watch a movie tomorrow, so I have to kind of pregame two films right now. And it is currently 9 p.m. So got a lot of work to do, and I gotta finish this episode before I can start watching films. So Shadow in the Cloud is a film that came out back in January of this year, 2021, and was directed by Roseanne Liang, who is a Chinese New Zealander. This film is kind of a co-production between the United States and New Zealand, and specifically Liang's identity as a Chinese New Zealander and as a woman. A lot of that is kind of melded into the fabric of this film, and how some of these identities end up getting her, mistreated in life. Because, as many advancements we've made since, World War II, women still aren't treated as equals when it comes to men, especially in the modern world. So I have to feel like a lot of what goes on in this movie really vindicates her and kind of is a way for her to get her rage out, because her main character kind of gets to say some of the things that probably I imagine she's wanted to say and scream in people's faces before when she's mistreated because of one of her identities. Prior to this, she only had one other feature film that's narrative from 2011. It actually did really well. It was the highest grossing New Zealand film of that year. And it was actually loosely based on a documentary she made a couple years prior that was about her romantic relationship with a guy on the island of New Zealand who eventually became her husband. So it's kind of a fun romantic documentary that ended up becoming a really big, at least local hit for her in 2011 when she adapted it into a narrative film. But other than that, she's done a lot of TV and short work. So she's really talented, and you can see that across all of the stuff that she's done. But this is her first big chance to prove herself, and it was really kind of a swing for the fences. According to the internet, this is a film that has a story treatment by Max Landis, and the screenplay is officially by Roseanne Liang. But there's some conflicting results there. So some people say that it's co-written by the two. Some people say two different drafts were done. It's a little bit complicated, but I do think the story treatment credit and then Liang getting the sole screenplay credit is probably more of a band-aid approach. I don't want to take away from Liang's work here. I think this is her film. Max Landis' involvement is negatable, but I do... It's a bit iffy, and there's a reason for that. Because around the time that this film was coming out, Max Landis underwent his Me Too moment. And it turns out that apparently it was kind of a industry secret that he was a pretty terrible dude. Obviously, I have to say allegedly all of this, because it has not been decided in a court of law as far as I know. And to keep myself out of legal trouble, I'm going to choose the journalistic practice of saying allegedly until there is a court, decision to protect myself. But I think you know what I believe by the fact that I've put this in the episode and I'm taking time out of the episode to talk about this. Max Landis is a complicated figure, and I'd briefly like to address who he is and why he's involved with this film. Technically, according to early posters, this film is written by Max Landis and Roseanne Liang. Max Landis is probably most known for his films Chronicle, Bright, and Mr. Right. All three of those are films. Bright is a Netflix film. Chronicle was a huge hit, directed by Josh Trank back in 2011. Around the same time, Liang was having her first big narrative hit in New Zealand. And so Chronicle was a huge smash hit. It was a tiny budget, but it actually did a lot for special effects and really cool creative storytelling at the time, especially for its budget. And so it's a really neat film that happens to have been written by an allegedly terrible person. Landis also co-created the Dirk Gently series for BBC America. For those who don't know, Dirk Gently is a series of books that was written by the fantastic Douglas Adams, who's probably more well known for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. This is more about a kind of a zany detective. It's weird. It's a good show, but like I said, anything that has Landis' name attached to it is kind of complicated. Landis actually had his kind of Me Too moment back in 2019, and that's when his career kind of stalled. Allegedly, he emotionally abused women that were in romantic relationships with him, and emotionally tormented the people that were close to him, and tried to isolate those in romantic relationships with him to the point where they didn't have access to outside people, and just thought that this was normal behavior, which is a pretty typical abuser tactic and is a big red flag. But I'm not blaming anybody who was the recipient of this, because if you're in an abusive relationship, oftentimes it builds up over time, and it's hard to see the red flags when they're coming in, because you do genuinely love that person and you want what's best for them and you don't want them to be a terrible person. But sometimes that is the exact thing they use against you to, keep you in the relationship long enough to where they're actually governing everything you do in your life. But like I said, it's kind of an industry secret that at least it's pretty well known in the industry that he's not a great guy, and he's kind of an emotionally abusive jerk who really likes to control the women that are in relationships with him. Obviously, all this is allegedly. Got to say that again for legal purposes. And because of all this, if you want to read more about the whole Max Landis thing, check out the description below. Anything that I mentioned that needs additional citation, that'll be always in the description below. So check those out if you need more additional information or want to dig into this yourself. But it's necessary to talk about this film, sadly, because it's a complicated viewing experience because of this. This is a film that is not only addressing abuse within the confines of the story, it is co-written by an abuser. It is a feminist film written by a guy who lives life allegedly as though he is the exact opposite of that. He wants to seem like a quote-unquote nice guy, allegedly. I hope you understand that I am not trying to diminish what he did allegedly. See, that sucks, the fact that I have to say that. Because I wholeheartedly believe the victims in this situation. The amount of people that came forward with information about him, and the fact that it's kind of a well-known secret that had been alluded to prior to this news coming to light, it makes sense. And the more you know about, Landis's family history, the more you're likely to believe this, because Max Landis is actually the son of John Landis, famous director of both comedies and horrors, and also kind of a notably not great guy either. And this is also some pretty dark territory, so specifically for this segment, this is another topic warning. This is child endangerment and death, because we're going to talk about the Twilight Zone movie incident. Yeah, this sucks. So on July 23rd, 1982, one of the most horrific accidents in film history ever happened on set for the Twilight Zone film. For those of you who don't know, the Twilight Zone film was an anthology movie directed by some of the biggest directors at the time, including Steven Spielberg. But John Landis was directing a segment that involved several kids and a helicopter, and it was all shot on a soundstage late at night. Landis was already violating a lot of rules and regulations, keeping kids there that late at 2:30 in the morning. So many rules that he was breaking, union rules and so much other stuff that's just obviously bad on the surface. But this was an incident that was entirely preventable. Keeping people that late at night, shooting a sequence like this on a soundstage. This was a huge special effects sequence that involved a helicopter and explosions, all kinds of things. And actor Vic Morrow and two child actors died due to this incident. That was wildly irresponsible and nearly ended not only the careers of John Landis, but of one of the biggest currently working directors right now, Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg was so angry about what happened here, because he was also a producer on the film, that he and Landis stopped. This terminated their friendship effectively. One of the most tragic incidents in film history, and it's one of the things that's so easily preventable. And it's one of those things where, like, there are directors that will go as far as they have to get the shot, to get the scene, to make it work. And sometimes you really need a producer to step in. And I know this is not like me to be like, oh, let's let the suits walk in. Sometimes you need those producers to be like, no, you can't do this. This is wrong. But certain directors just kind of get a clout and are able to do whatever they want to. And at the time, Landis was pretty big, and so he got to, do something incredibly stupid and lied to people to make it happen. And that cost 3 people their lives that night. And it's one of the most easily avoidable instances, and one of the most tragic accidents that's ever happened in regards to film. Plenty of people have either been seriously injured or killed on film sets, but this is one of the most ridiculous and stupid things. And the fact that it killed a talented actor and 2 children who shouldn't have even been on set, and definitely shouldn't have been on this particular kind of set with the amount of special effects that were going off and the amount of danger involved. It's just one of those things that's forever a blemish on, this movie, this director, and film history. And, as many things as Landis has done right in terms of films that he's made that I've enjoyed, this has always left a bitter taste in my mouth. So when Landis effectively just got away with it and got to continue working. So when you hear that his son also operated with kind of an impunity and felt like he could get away with anything, it makes sense. This kind of just feels like, yes, that is that makes total sense that these two people are related. They feel like they can get away with anything, and because they are two of the biggest people in the film industry, they kind of can. Max Landis just finally got caught with too many incidents that were being, affirmed by quite a few people, and, the fact that people were kind of like, yeah, he's a terrible guy, and we just didn't want to say anything because his dad's pretty powerful, and we'd like to keep working in the industry. So that's a dark thing to mention in this episode, because I do think this film is great, and I do think the ideas it has in it are so fun and unique and interesting, and the way it goes about doing it is part of what makes me love it. I love the camp, I love the vibe, I love the style, and how confident Liang is at the director's chair, and the thing that she was able to put together, even despite Landis's involvement. But I do have to put this in here because it does make this complicated. It makes this weird and difficult to kind of rectify with maybe a film that you'll really enjoy or really vibe with the politics of it. But that's what I seek to do with anything like Movie Club or this. I want to give you context so that way you can either completely enjoy the film, knowing even more about it, or you can kind of sit in the mire with me and understand that there's some complexity to a film that might make it messier than just like, oh yeah, I really love that film. Sometimes you have to deal with this kind of stuff. It's important. And to, ignore the fact that this is a film that affirms a lot of feminist ideology and pushes back against misogyny, but is also written by an alleged misogynist, or at least co-written by an alleged misogynist. It's important. I mean, to disregard it is to kind of do like what the studio did with this film, try and brush Max Landis' involvement under the rug. And I don't want that to happen, because that would be to silence the stories of the women that have bravely come forward to tell their side of the story when it comes to their relationships with Max Landis. And I don't want to silence them. I want to put their voices, out in front and not ignore them. So, as I said previously, if you want to dive deeper into that and listen to some of their stories directly, you can follow the links in the description in the source section. You can also read more about the incident on the Twilight Zone movie down there. I know it's depressing, I know it sucks, but I had to mention this, otherwise I would have felt like I wasn't doing my job, I wasn't doing my due diligence to tell you what's going on in this film, and kind of the complexities that go into enjoying it. So let's talk about the actual film now, because I've had to take a pretty big detour. The film itself only runs 83 minutes, so it's a breeze from start to finish, and it's so well constructed that each sequence does something interesting and new, and it continuously delivers on the thrills and the action in this action horror film. There is nary a moment where you get to kind of breathe and reset yourself before the next onslaught of awful things happening. There's body horror, all kinds of war violence, but it's done in a way that I don't think is tasteless. It's a campy film, but it's unafraid to get violent, because it is, a combination of a creature feature, a war film, a drama. There's so much going on here, and it's very interesting, and the style in which Liang chooses to do it is so interesting. So let's talk about the stars, because the big star at the front of this film is Chloe Grace Moretz, who got her big start back in the film series Kick-Ass from a couple years ago. Was also in Neighbors 2 and the Equalizer remake with Denzel Washington. She's a fantastic character actor and has really proved herself over the years, and I think this is one of her strongest performances to date, because she's got to do a lot of emotional depth, because from the second she steps on the plane that is our main location for the entire film, both the audience and the characters that are already on the plane don't know how much of her story they can trust, and don't know how much of the truth she's telling, or if any of what she's saying is true. And the fact that we're not even sure how much we can trust her makes this such an interesting film, because we want to resonate with her, we want to root for her, but how can we do that if we don't know who we're rooting for? And that's one of the compelling things that I think this film does. It gives us a mystery to try and uncover and unpack and figure out what's going on long before the characters get an idea, long before they piece it all together on screen. The other big star in this film is Nick Robinson, who was in Jurassic World as the older brother, The Kings of Summer, which is a fantastic coming-of-age film, A Teacher, the FX show that was critically acclaimed with Kate Mara. Fantastic performances at the front of that between Nick Robinson and Kate Mara. Fantastic show dealing with some really complicated and tightrope walking thematic challenges. So go watch that if you want a really compelling show. That thing's bananas. Also, love Simon as the titular Simon. So he's done quite a few things, and he's also a really talented character actor, and I think does some really great work here. Critic Nick Allen for RogerEbert.com wrote that this film is sincere but silly. I would tend to agree, but I would make one caveat here. I would reverse those two. I think this is a silly, campy, very stylized film, but it is sincere in what it's trying to do and what it's trying to say. I think its message is important, and the way it goes about doing that and developing empathy for our main character is really cool. But yeah, I do think it's also important to mention that because this film came out in January of 2021, it didn't do hot at the box office. I got varying degrees of numbers on budget, so I don't know. It is kind of pretty CGI heavy and does have some practical effects, so I imagine this was not a cheap film to make, but it made less than $1 million at the box office, which, makes sense. January of 2021, we were not doing hot with the pandemic. Not a ton of people were vaccinated. This film was barely in theaters for like 2 or 3 weeks. And I definitely wasn't comfortable. I definitely wasn't comfortable going back to the theaters to see this, but I did rent it myself, and I did really enjoy it. I actually own it now because if I can, this past year I've liked to support creators when I can, when I have the money that I can expend on it. I love to buy as many movies as I possibly can, because I do think supporting, especially the smaller films this year, has been something that I can do that's easy and doesn't take up too much time and doesn't take up too much money. So if you're capable of doing that and you like this film, yeah, just give it a purchase. Buy a digital copy, buy a physical copy, because you'll get the commentary track and all kinds of goodies and deleted scenes that you don't get with digital copies, which I don't understand because they make me pay full price. If I'm paying $24 for something that doesn't include a physical copy of the film, why am I not getting all the goodies that come along with the physical copy of the film? This is insane. You don't have to pay as much to make digital copies because all it takes is storage space on a server. That's my little rant for the day. The plot is relatively simple. Maude Garrett, who is played by Chloe Grace Moretz, brings a package onto a warplane that's about to take off that is filled with nothing but men, young men who are about to go off to war on a mission that's pretty secret. But we don't know what's in this package, and she refuses to tell anyone on board, and realistically, they can't do anything because she has some papers that say that this is top secret and they're not allowed to touch it or open it or do anything. But because of the limited space on the plane, she's forced to sit in the turret during takeoff and leave the package up in the main part of the plane with one of the few men that take kindly to her, or at least are nicer than the rest of the guys. And so we already have a mystery. Who is this woman and what's in that? What's in the box? And then when the gremlins show up and start ripping the plane apart, things really go sideways, and that's when we start to get in the more campy and straight horror stuff. But this film is never afraid to have at least a fun joke that kind of punches up a moment that makes something that would be otherwise deadly serious fun and much more lighthearted. Now obviously, this is still a pretty serious film with all the subject matter it's dealing with, and I would tend to agree with critics, it doesn't always hit its marks, but when it does it so well. And because of my love for Twilight Zone and for camp that this film is so clearly pulling from, and its incredible camera work and styling, I have to commend it and I have to celebrate it. And it's why I wanted to cover it so early on in the series. So if you're down for a little bit of gore, some fun creature stuff, and a compelling mystery at the heart of this film, 83 minutes is not much to ask of your time. And, you know, Shadow in the Cloud is for genre lovers, for film lovers, and for people who just want to have a good time watching a movie. There's not much else you can say about this film, but I do hope that if you do check it out, you really do enjoy it. So that wraps up our evening on October 9th. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at midnight as we cover the French film Oxygen. It's on Netflix, so you can check it out and watch it alongside me. I'm excited to check it out. I actually haven't seen it yet, as I said a little bit earlier, so I'm going to stop recording, I'm going to edit this real quick, and then I'm going to start watching that movie. So thanks for watching this. I hope you've been enjoying October Night so far. I really enjoyed making these videos. I've enjoyed putting myself through the ringer and trying to make a project that drops a video every single day in October. I know it's wild, I know it's crazy, but I am excited for the work that we're doing here. So thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. I've been your host for October Nights, Patrick Smith, and I only have one thing left to say to you. Sweet dreams.